Hello everybody, welcome to my channel.
Raquel Welch. A lasting icon of Hollywood glamour, Raquel Welch remains one of the most recognizable figures of 20th century Hollywood, celebrated for her striking screen presence, entrepreneurial spirit, and influence on popular culture. Rising to fame during the 1960s, she carved out a space in an industry that often tried to define actresses by narrow stereotypes, ultimately building a career that blended film, television, business, and cultural impact. Welch was born Jo Raquel Tejada on September 5, 1940, in Chicago. She grew up in California, where early interests in performance led her into beauty pageants, local theater, and broadcasting. Her breakthrough came in 1966 with the films Fantastic Voyage and 1,000,000 Years BC. The latter featured her in the now iconic doeskin bikini that became a pop cultural emblem of the era. Although the role had few lines, the imagery became an international sensation and established her as a new face of Hollywood glamour. Despite being typecast early on, Welch made determined efforts to expand her range. She took on roles in comedies, dramas, and action films, including Bedazzled, 1967, Bandolero, 1968, and Myra Breckinridge, 1970. Her performance in The Three Musketeers, 1973, earned her a Golden Globe Award for Best Actress in a Motion Picture Comedy or Musical. Throughout her career, she consistently sought opportunities that allowed her to push past expectations and show her versatility. Beyond film, Welch became a successful entrepreneur. Her fitness videos in the 1980s sold in the millions, and her line of wigs, launched later, became a major commercial success. These ventures helped redefine her public image from glamorous screen star to savvy businesswoman. Welch's influence stretched well beyond her body of work. She became a symbol of a shifting era in Hollywood, representing both the allure and limits placed on women in the industry. Over time, she embraced her role as a cultural icon while also advocating for stronger, more complex roles for women. Raquel Welch passed away on February 15, 2023, at the age of 82. Her legacy endures in film history, fashion, and popular culture. She is remembered not only for her beauty but for her determination, adaptability, and the lasting mark she made across several generations of entertainment. Raquel Welch. A deeper look at the life and legacy of a Hollywood trailblazer. Raquel Welch occupies a singular place in the landscape of American entertainment. For decades, she embodied a blend of poise, ambition, glamour, and quiet resilience that allowed her to outlast many of the labels placed on her early in her career. Her rise to fame traced the shifting values of Hollywood in the 1960s and 1970s, while her later ventures showed the tenacity of a woman determined to define herself on her own terms. Early life and the making of a performer. Born Jo Raquel Tejada to a Bolivian father and an American mother, Welch spent most of her childhood in San Diego. From a young age, she gravitated toward performance. Ballet lessons, school plays, and beauty pageants weren't just hobbies, they were expressions of an instinct for the spotlight. After studying theater arts at San Diego State College, she worked as a weather presenter and model while chasing acting opportunities in Los Angeles. Her mixed cultural background was rarely highlighted at the time, in part due to a Hollywood system that encouraged her to downplay her Latina heritage. Later in her life, she spoke more openly about it, acknowledging the complexity of forging an identity within a studio culture that valued certain images over others. Breakthrough roles and instant iconography. Welch's ascent began in 1966. Fantastic Voyage introduced her to mainstream audiences, but it was 1,000,000 Years BC. that launched her into global stardom. As the prehistoric heroine clad in a doeskin bikini, Welch became an international symbol almost overnight. The poster became an enduring piece of pop culture iconography, cementing her status as a glamorous figure of the era. Yet this sudden fame came with an immediate challenge. The industry tried to confine her to roles that emphasized appearance over substance. Welch wasn't shy about acknowledging her frustration with that dynamic. Nevertheless, she used the opportunities she had to build visibility and then pressed for roles that offered more nuance, breaking the mold during the late 1960s and 1970s. Welch's filmography reflected her determination to push beyond the superficial. She played everything from comedic vamps to action heroines to complex and dramatic characters. Her turn in The Three Musketeers, 1973, surprised critics with its charm and comedic timing, earning her a Golden Globe Award and a renewed sense of artistic credibility. Welch also made waves on the stage, including a celebrated run on Broadway in Woman of the Year, which showcased her skills as both an actress and a singer. These moves helped shift public perceptions, showing that she was far more than the sex symbol Hollywood had initially tried to manufacture. A businesswoman ahead of her time as the entertainment industry evolved, Welch adapted. The 1980s saw her step into the emerging world of fitness media with best-selling workout videos that blended wellness, glamour, and a sense of empowerment long before celebrity fitness empires became common. Her wig and hairpiece line, launched later, developed into a major business success. Welch approached it not simply as a branding exercise but as a way to offer solutions for people dealing with hair loss, thinning, or personal style changes. The line's longevity reflected both its quality and her skill as a marketer with a strong understanding of her audience. Cultural impact and legacy. Welch's influence spans multiple generations. She helped define the aesthetics of 1960s pop culture, but she also became a template for the modern multi-hyphenate entertainer, actress, entrepreneur, spokesperson, performer, and style icon. She also challenged the limited roles available to women in her era. Her determination to be taken seriously as a performer helped nudge Hollywood, slowly, toward giving actresses more dimensional parts. At the same time, she embraced her public image with a sense of humor and self-awareness, recognizing both its power and its limitations. Final years and enduring influence. Raquel Welch passed away on February 15, 2023. Even in her final decade, she remained a figure of fascination and admiration. Younger audiences continued to rediscover her work through streaming platforms, fashion retrospectives, and pop culture references that kept her image alive. Today, Welch's legacy stands as a blend of beauty, discipline, reinvention, and quiet strength. Her career navigated the tensions between celebrity and authenticity, expectation and ambition, image and individuality. Few figures in Hollywood history managed to turn a single iconic role into such a lasting, multifaceted body of work. Raquel Welch didn't just survive the studio era, the cultural revolutions of the 1960s, or the shifting trends of entertainment. She thrived in them, adapted to them, and left a mark that remains unmistakable. A fuller portrait of Raquel Welch. Beyond the icon navigating Hollywood's changing landscape. To understand Raquel Welch's impact, it helps to remember the era she stepped into. The Hollywood of the mid-1960s was a crossroads. The old studio system was collapsing, censorship rules were loosening, and a younger, countercultural audience was reshaping the market. Studios were scrambling to reinvent what a movie star looked like. Welch arrived at precisely the right moment. Her image appealed to the global fascination with bold, rebellious femininity. But she also carried the poise of classic Hollywood glamour. She felt both modern and timeless. That duality helped her rise rapidly, even as she pushed against the industry's attempts to dictate her path. Choosing roles with intention. Although many early offers emphasized physical appeal, Welch was far more strategic than people realized. She gravitated toward roles that allowed her to play smart, capable women rather than decorative ones. Films like Bandolero positioned her alongside heavyweights like James Stewart and Dean Martin, proving she could hold her own in material that blended action and drama. In Hani Calder, 1971, she played a frontier survivor seeking revenge, a role that showcased grit and emotional weight. The film is now cited by some film historians as an early influence on the female-centered revenge narratives that would become more common decades later. Her willingness to take risks sometimes put her at odds with critics, especially in experimental or controversial projects like Myra Breckinridge. Yet even those choices revealed a performer unafraid of artistic challenge. She repeatedly reached for roles that provoked conversation, whether they earned praise or backlash. Shaping the conversation around beauty for much of her career, Welch was considered one of the world's most beautiful women. That level of attention can be a trap for an actress. But Welch used it to start broader conversations. In interviews, she often spoke openly about the pressures placed on women in Hollywood, the expectations around body image, and the contradictions of being both admired and underestimated. She once remarked that beauty could be a golden cage if an actress wasn't careful. This awareness led her to cultivate discipline, professionalism, and a strong sense of personal boundaries. Colleagues consistently described her as prepared, focused, and protective of her time and image. Expanding her reach, television, variety, and music as film roles evolved over the decades, Welch embraced television with the same confidence she brought to movies. She starred in specials, guest roles, and miniseries, often leaning into comedy or musical performance. The variety format in particular allowed her to showcase charisma, dance skills, and unexpected comedic timing. These appearances also helped her transcend generational divides. People who never saw her films grew familiar with her through talk shows, late-night TV, and pop culture moments where she demonstrated a warm sense of humor about her own iconic status. A model of reinvention. One reason Raquel Welch endured long past her cinematic peak is that she understood reinvention as a lifelong process. Her fitness empire in the 1980s wasn't a superficial foray. It aligned with her real interest in health, discipline, and self-development. The tone of her fitness content was distinctly hers, poised, elegant, and aspirational without being aggressive. Her wig line became even more influential. Welch approached it with empathy for people dealing with hair loss or aging. She helped normalize wig use far outside Hollywood circles, emphasizing confidence, dignity, and personal style. In many ways, this venture reflected a different kind of legacy, one rooted in service and empowerment. Personal resilience and private life. Though a staple of public conversation for decades, Welch kept her private life largely shielded. She married 4 times, raised 2 children, and maintained friendships across the entertainment industry. Those close to her often described her as disciplined, thoughtful, and surprisingly grounded. She spoke candidly about the challenges of balancing fame with family life, and she never pretended the journey was easy. Yet she approached each stage with determination, acknowledging failures, celebrating triumphs, and consistently reshaping her identity with intention. How future generations continue to discover her, part of Welch's lasting magic is how she continues to captivate people who weren't alive during her era of peak fame. The iconic imagery from 1 million years BC still circulates, showing up in fashion editorials, album art, film homages, and Halloween costumes. Designers cite her as an influence. Film students study her career arc. Pop stars channel her aesthetic in videos and performances. Meanwhile, her later work in television and entrepreneurial spaces resonates with audiences who appreciate resilience and reinvention as essential qualities of modern celebrity. A legacy that stands on its own terms. Raquel Welch's legacy isn't simply that she was beautiful. It's that she refused to let beauty define or confine her. She navigated an industry that often wanted to flatten women into archetypes, and she carved out autonomy through versatility, discipline, and business savvy. She left behind a filmography full of memorable performances, a brand empire that helped people express themselves confidently, and a cultural footprint that remains unmistakable. Her story is ultimately one of a woman who learned early on that the world would try to write her narrative for her. Instead, she wrote her own. Raquel Welch in the evolution of stardom. To fully appreciate Raquel Welch's career, it helps to see how she fit into the evolving concept of celebrity. During the 1960s and 1970s, Hollywood was experimenting with a new type of star, one who existed both within film narratives and as a cultural symbol outside them. Welch perfectly embodied this shift. She became more than an actress, she became a reference point. Her image circulated through posters, magazines, advertisements, television variety shows, and even political commentary. In that sense, she helped define what modern stardom looks like, a blend of talent, media presence, branding, and personal narrative. She did this long before the age of social media, which makes her impact even more striking. A symbol in a time of change. Raquel Welch's arrival coincided with major conversations about gender, liberation, and identity. While she became an emblem of sensuality, she also represented a kind of independence that resonated with women navigating their own shifting roles in society. She often played characters who were clever, capable, and unwilling to be defined by the men around them, even when the scripts did not explicitly frame them that way. Welch's own presence often added a sense of agency. She carried herself with self-possession, and audiences noticed. That confidence made her more than a pin-up figure. It made her aspirational. Critical reassessment. Over time, like many stars whose fame exploded quickly, Welch endured decades of inconsistent critical reception. Some early critics dismissed her as a product of marketing rather than talent. Yet as attitudes toward genre films, camp, and classic Hollywood evolved, critics began revisiting her performances with fresh eyes. Her comedic roles especially gained new appreciation. Reviewers came to admire the subtlety and timing she brought to ensemble pieces, particularly in films where she held her own against veteran comedians. Scholars of film history now argue that her blend of glamour and irony helped shift audience expectations and widen the scope of female character types. A style icon across eras, Welch's influence on fashion is massive and often under-discussed. Her look blended bombshell glamour with a modern edge. Designers borrowed from her hairstyles, silhouettes, and attitude. Photographers used her as a template for bold, high-contrast portraiture that still inspires editorial shoots today. She was also ahead of her time in how she used fashion as self-definition. Whether on screen or in public appearances, her style choices emphasized structure, elegance, and a sense of control. She used clothing to shape her own narrative, something many women in entertainment did not fully gain the freedom to do until decades later. Presence without excess. One of the most fascinating aspects of Welch's public persona is how carefully measured it was. She remained present across decades of media cycles without oversharing or chasing constant attention. She appeared when she had something to promote or a project she cared about, then stepped back into private life. This approach kept her legend intact while allowing her to age gracefully in an industry that is notoriously unforgiving to women. Later interviews reveal that this distance was intentional. She valued privacy, routine, and steady work more than high-voltage celebrity drama. This approach made her career more sustainable and allowed her to remain respected long after many of her contemporaries faded from the spotlight. Lasting relevance in a digital world even after her passing, Raquel Welch remains strangely contemporary. Younger audiences encounter her image online in retro fashion accounts, film history threads, and cinematic montage videos that highlight her magnetic on-screen presence. TikTok users edit her scenes into aesthetics-focused compilations, celebrating her poise and style. Her fitness material has even found new life in nostalgic corners of the internet where vintage wellness trends are being rediscovered. In this sense, her legacy has entered a second life. She is no longer just a star of a bygone era. She is part of the visual vocabulary of modern pop culture. Why her story still matters. Raquel Welch's life captures the journey of a woman navigating fame, identity, expectation, and ambition in a highly public space. Her experience touches on themes that feel incredibly modern: the pressure to appear effortless, the battle against being reduced to a stereotype, the push to reinvent oneself over time, and the desire to be taken seriously in a world that often rewards spectacle over substance. Her resilience is a huge part of why her story resonates today. She survived not by playing along with every demand but by choosing when to engage, when to pivot, and when to quietly reinvent herself. That balance kept her relevant and respected across more than 50 years of public life. A legacy built to last by the time of her passing in 2023. Raquel Welch had become one of those rare figures who transcended generational boundaries. She influenced film, fashion, business, and the evolving image of women in the media. Her impact is both visible and subtle. It shows up in the roles actresses fight for today, in the way beauty standards have broadened, and in the fact that stars are now expected to be multifaceted rather than confined to one lane. Her story serves as a reminder that even icons have to fight for agency, and that the most enduring legacies are built not only on charisma, but on clarity, work ethic, and an unshakable sense of self. The professionalism behind the persona. Those who worked closely with Raquel Welch often described a performer who treated the job with absolute seriousness. Sets can be chaotic, egos can clash, and productions can spiral. Welch, despite the glamorous persona attached to her, was known for being punctual, prepared, and detail-oriented. She reviewed scripts carefully, paid attention to continuity, and asked precise questions about blocking and camera angles. This reputation sometimes ran up against the era's gender expectations. A man doing the same things was taken seriously. A woman doing them could be labeled difficult. Welch pushed through that double standard with quiet determination. Over time, colleagues recognized that her assertiveness came from professionalism, not ego. Working with Hollywood heavyweights throughout her career, Welch shared the screen with some of the biggest actors of the 20th century. Many of these pairings were intentionally designed by studios to elevate her standing. Over time, though, she developed her own gravitational pull. She acted opposite James Stewart, Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, Burt Reynolds, Peter Cook, and Richard Burton. These collaborations allowed her to absorb a wide range of acting styles: Stewart's understated subtlety, Burton's theatrical flair, Sinatra's relaxed cool. Welch studied everyone she worked with, borrowing techniques that suited her and discarding what didn't match her instincts. Behind the scenes, she was respected for not being intimidated by star power. She would hold her ground in scenes, delivering performances that balanced strength and charm without being overshadowed. international stardom and global appeal, while Hollywood was the foundation of her career. Welch's influence spread far beyond the United States. She became a true global celebrity, with significant followings in Europe, Latin America, and Asia. Her image adorned posters, record sleeves, and imported film magazines around the world. In some countries, her popularity reached near mythic levels. Italian cinema enthusiasts embraced her as both a glamour figure and a performer with surprising comedic instincts. British audiences admired her appearances in television specials and appreciated her wry sense of humor. In Latin America, her heritage gave her a symbolic presence that many fans embraced long before the American media acknowledged it. Her global resonance shows how star power can transcend language and cultural boundaries. Even when films were dubbed or re-edited for overseas markets, her presence carried unmistakable magnetism. Influence on future generations of performers. Many actresses who entered the industry in the 1980s, 1990s, and 2000s have cited Welch as an influence. Some mention her fashion sense, others her confidence, and many point to the way she balanced glamour with a strong personal identity. Her career created space for actresses who wanted to be bold, athletic, glamorous, witty, and commanding all at once. She helped prove that a performer could embrace physical beauty with
Bye bye, thanks for watching. Bye.